The moment I turned 18, my parents started asking $900 a month for rent. I paid it once, then decided to move out and found a place with friends for $550 a month. They called screaming about family loyalty. I mentioned their loyalty first and everything they lost when I left Hey Reddit. The moment I turned 18, my parents basically decided I was their new ATM and full-time driver. They charged me $900 a month to share a bedroom with my brother, made me cover half of every bill, and expected me to handle errands like an unpaid assistant. I paid that amount for exactly 1 month, then moved out and found a place with friends for $550. That's when everything completely blew up, because their reliable source of money and free labor was suddenly gone. I'm a 23-year-old guy now, sitting in my own apartment, finally able to sleep past 6 o'clock a.m. on a Saturday without someone pounding on my door demanding I drive my sister to the mall. It's been 5 months since I moved out, and my parents are still losing their minds over it. Before I get into the current mess, here's what life was like growing up in their house. Things were fairly normal until I was about 15. That's when my parents decided I was old enough to help support the household. At first, it sounded reasonable, chores, helping out here and there. But their idea of helping quickly turned into a full-time job I wasn't getting paid for. Once I got my license at 16, I instantly became the family driver. My younger brother Jake was 13 and played travel soccer, which meant practices 3 times a week and games almost every weekend. My sister Lily was 11 and involved in dance, gymnastics, and an art class that seemed to change locations constantly. My parents both worked, but their schedules were flexible. My dad managed a mid-sized insurance office and could leave whenever he wanted. My mom worked part-time at a dental office and was usually done by mid-afternoon. Still, somehow, driving the kids around became my responsibility after school. I'd drive Jake across town for soccer, wait around for an hour or more because going home wasn't worth the gas, then drive him back. Weekends meant long tournament trips, sometimes hours away. Lily's activities were even more scattered. North Side for dance, across town for gymnastics, some random strip mall for art class. I spent most evenings sitting in parking lots doing homework in my car or scrolling on my phone while waiting. They never offered gas money. When I asked, my dad said the car belonged to them, so gas was already covered. The car was an old 2008 Honda Civic with nearly 180,000 miles, and I was only allowed to use it for family errands. Hanging out with friends required permission, and most of the time the answer was no because someone needed a ride. Errands became my job too. Grocery shopping started around 16. My mom would text me a long list while I was still at school, and I was expected to stop on the way home. Full shopping trips, multiple stores, unloading everything while my parents relaxed on the couch. If I complained, my dad would remind me that they worked all day and deserved to rest. Apparently, school plus hours of driving and errands didn't count as real work. Post office runs, dry cleaning, returning items my mom changed her mind about, dropping things off at relatives' houses. If it required leaving the house, it was automatically my task. My weekends were packed with responsibilities while my parents went out to brunch or binge-watched shows. The worst part was that I wasn't allowed to get a real job. I applied to a local restaurant at 16 and actually got hired. When I told my parents, my dad immediately asked who was going to drive my brother to practice. I suggested they could, or that I could work around the schedule. My mom said they had commitments and needed me available. A job would interfere with family responsibilities. I had to call the restaurant and turn the job down. School became my escape. I was a decent student, but I could have done much better if I had time. Instead, I studied in parking lots and stayed up late finishing assignments after everyone else's errands were done. Teachers noticed how exhausted I always looked. I made excuses because I couldn't exactly say my parents were treating me like their unpaid employee. Senior year, I applied to colleges and got accepted into a solid state school about 3 hours away. Not my dream school, but far enough that I couldn't commute, and that alone felt like freedom. I was counting down the days until I could finally get out of this situation. That's when my parents revealed what I now realize was their long-term plan. We were eating dinner when my dad cleared his throat in that serious way he always used before dropping bad news. I assumed they'd figured out some new way to keep me busy during the summer before college. We've been talking about your college plans, my dad said. And we don't think it's financially smart for you to move away when you could attend community college here and continue living at home. My stomach sank. But I already got accepted, I said. I paid the deposit, we'll get it refunded, my mom replied. Community college is cheaper and you can always transfer after 2 years. And honestly, we need me here for what? Well, Dad said, someone has to keep driving Jake and Lily around. Their schedules are getting more intense. Jake just made the elite travel team, so there will be more practices and weekend tournaments. Lily joined competitive gymnastics. We're going to need extra help, not less. That was the moment it clicked. They didn't want me to go away to college because it would interfere with my role as their unpaid driver and errand runner. Their convenience mattered more than my future. I wish I'd fought harder. I wish I'd demanded they respect my college acceptance. But at 17, I didn't understand that I had any real control. They managed everything, my access to the car, my money, even important paperwork. So I went along with it. That fall, I enrolled at the local community college. It wasn't a bad school, just not what I wanted. I told myself I'd stick it out for 2 years and then transfer. At least I'd be out of the house during the day and maybe finally get a part-time job. That didn't happen. My classes were only 3 days a week, which my parents saw as even more availability for family responsibilities. And when I tried to get a job again, I got the same response as before. Family came first. Those 2 years felt like an extension of high school. Driving siblings everywhere, running errands, doing whatever I was told, except now I was also juggling college classes. I had even less time than before. My social life was basically non-existent. I did make one friend, Connor, from one of my classes. Good guy, same major. He understood controlling parents because he dealt with something similar. We'd grab lunch between classes when I wasn't busy running errands. Connor lived in a rented house with 2 roommates. They each paid about $400 a month plus utilities. Going over there felt unreal. They had freedom, set their own schedules, ate when they wanted, came and went without asking permission. Normal adult life that felt completely out of reach for me. Why don't you just move out? Connor asked one day. I can't, I said. I don't have a job, then get one. He made it sound easy. But every time I tried, my parents shut it down. They needed me, available. I'd been so conditioned to put their needs first that leaving didn't even feel like an option. Then my 18th birthday came around. I'd been thinking a lot about what Connor said. I started browsing job listings in my limited free time. If I could find something decent, maybe I could save up and move out within a year. My birthday landed on a Tuesday. I didn't expect anything big, maybe dinner later. When I got home around noon, both my parents were sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread out in front of them. Sit down, my dad said. We need to talk about your living situation now that you're 18. Living situation. A strange phrase considering I'd lived there my entire life. My mom slid a paper toward me. It was a lease agreement, an actual rental contract for living in my own family's house starting immediately. My dad said, you'll be paying $900 a month in rent. That covers your portion of the mortgage, utilities, groceries, and general household costs. Rent is due on the 1st of every month. I just stared at the number. $900. I didn't have that kind of money. I didn't have any money. I don't have a job. I said, then you should get one. My mom replied. You're an adult now. Adults pay their way. The irony was unbelievable. For years, they'd blocked me from working because I was too useful to them. Now that I was legally an adult, they expected nearly $1,000 a month to stay in the same house. And rent is just the base, my dad added. You'll also cover half of all household bills, electric, water, internet. We'll split it evenly now that there are 2 adults in the house. 2 adults, me and them. Apparently Jake and Lily didn't count. Your responsibilities won't change, my mom said. Driving your siblings, running errands, helping around the house. That's just part of contributing to the family. So I'd be paying $900 plus half the bills, still doing all the unpaid work, and sharing a bedroom with my brother, yes. My dad confirmed when I asked. The spare room is becoming your mother's office, and Lily needs her own space. According to them, this arrangement made the most sense. I was 18 years old, expected to pay nearly $1,000 a month just to sleep on a twin bed in a room I still shared with my 15-year-old brother. He stayed up until midnight gaming with his headset on, while I was somehow expected to be available for everyone and handle all the household responsibilities. I need some time to think about this, I said. There's nothing to think about, my dad replied. You're an adult now. This is how adulthood works. You can agree to these terms and stay here, or you can find somewhere else to live. It was clearly meant as a threat. Like I had no real options. Where would I go? How could I afford anything on my own? But something clicked in that moment. The same parents who had spent years making sure I couldn't work or save were now demanding a monthly payment that would require full-time employment. The hypocrisy was so obvious it actually cleared my head. I signed the lease. They looked pleased, like they'd successfully converted me from free labor into paying labor. I went upstairs to the room I shared with Jake and immediately started planning how to get out. That same night, I found a job listing. A hardware store about 20 minutes away was hiring full-time employees. Flexible hours, decent pay, benefits after 90 days. I applied right away. 2 days later, they called me back. The interview went smoothly. The manager asked if I could start immediately. I said yes without hesitation. He seemed surprised by how eager I was, but I wasn't about to explain that I was desperately trying to escape my living situation. I started the following Monday. 40 hours a week at $16 an hour. At the end of my first week, I brought home a paycheck for about $640 before taxes. After paying my parents' rent and half the bills, I'd have maybe $150 left for the entire month. No savings, no safety net, no real way out. I was essentially trapped. During my first week working full-time, I got home around 6:00 p.m., completely exhausted from learning new systems and unloading deliveries all day. I collapsed on my bed, hoping to rest for 20 minutes before dinner. 10 minutes later, my mom knocked. Lily needs a ride to gymnastics. You need to leave in 15 minutes. Can Dad take her? I asked. I just worked 8 hours. I'm exhausted. Your father is busy, she said. And your responsibilities don't disappear just because you have a job, so I dragged myself up, grabbed the keys, and drove Lily 30 minutes to gymnastics. I waited in the parking lot for 2 hours, because going home would have wasted gas. Then I drove her back. I got home around 10 p.m., reheated leftovers because I'd missed dinner and went straight to sleep. That became my routine work all day. Come home exhausted. Immediately get sent out again for sibling transport or errands. I was working full-time and still functioning as their unpaid assistant mid-month. The bills arrived. Electric, water, internet, and now I was also responsible for half the gas bill, even though most of that gas was used driving their kids everywhere. My share came out to an extra $340 on top of rent. I sat down one night and did the math. After rent and bills, I was keeping about $200 a month from a full-time job. $200. That had to cover gas, food outside the house, clothes, and anything else they didn't feel like paying for. Meanwhile, Jake and Lily lived rent-free, had rides everywhere, and had all their activities fully funded. I was working full-time, subsidizing their lifestyle and still being treated like the help. I started browsing apartment listings during my lunch breaks. Anything remotely affordable. The cheapest studios were around $800 a month plus utilities, and most required first and last month's rent up front. Even if I saved every cent, it would take 6 months to come up with $1,600. Assuming nothing went wrong then, Connor texted me one of his roommates was moving out in 3 weeks, and they needed someone to take the room. Rent was $450 plus utilities, usually around $550 total. There was another person interested, but Connor wanted to offer it to me first. $550, nearly half of what my parents were charging me. And I'd have my own room, my own space, my own life. I ran the numbers over and over that night. If I paid my parents 1 more month of rent, I'd have about 3 weeks to save enough for the first month at Connor's place. Between paychecks and being extremely careful, it might just work barely. I told Connor I was in move-in was scheduled for the first of the next month, which meant I had exactly 3 weeks to save $550 and figure out how to tell my parents I was leaving. Those 3 weeks were brutal. I worked every hour I could get, picked up extra shifts whenever possible, skipped lunches to save money, stopped buying coffee. Every dollar went into a savings account my parents didn't know existed at home. Nothing changed. I drove siblings around, ran errands, paid rent, acted like everything was normal. My parents had no idea I was planning to leave. Jake started getting suspicious during the second week. He woke up one night and caught me scrolling through apartment listings at 1:00 a.m. "You moving out or something?" he asked soon. I said. He paused, then asked, "Are you still going to drive me places?" That question hit harder than I expected. He wasn't worried about losing his brother. He was worried about losing his ride. Probably not, I said. He shrugged and went back to his game. He didn't ask any follow-up questions or seem worried at all. Just accepted that his free ride service was ending. 2 days before move-out, I checked my finances one last time. I had $580 saved, just enough for rent and utilities with a tiny cushion. I packed what little I owned into boxes and garbage bags. Most of my money had gone to my parents, but it was enough to start fresh. On the morning of the 1st, while my parents were at work and Jake was at school, I loaded my car. It took 3 trips to move everything to Connor's place. I texted my parents to meet me in the kitchen when they got home. They arrived around 5:30. Dad asked what this was about. "I'm moving out," I said. I explained I'd found a cheaper place, already moved my stuff, and would have my own room. The room went silent. Mom looked confused. Dad turned red. "You can't just leave." Mom said, "It's a month-to-month lease," I replied. "I paid this month. I won't be paying next." Dad accused me of being selfish and asked who would drive Jake and Lily. I suggested they handle it themselves. "You had responsibilities to this family," he said. I corrected. "You said I'm an adult. Adults choose where they live." Mom tried guilt. I reminded her I'd been paying $900 to share a room while running errands and driving their kids. Dad tried to order me home and threatened to take my stuff back. I reminded him it was my property. After going in circles, I left. That night, I unloaded the last boxes at Connor's place, ordered pizza, and slept in my own room. Best sleep I'd had in years. The first 2 weeks felt unreal. No errands, no driving, just work and peace. Then the messages started: guilt from Mom, disappointment from my siblings, anger from Dad. I mostly ignored them. Week 3, Mom called yelling about loyalty. I told her my rent was now $550 for my own room and 0 unpaid labor. "This isn't about family," I said. "It's about math." She had no answer and hung up. Dad called later, saying my leaving cost them over $1,200 a month. He said I still owed family responsibilities. I told him I didn't owe them anything for doing what parents are legally required to do. He threatened to sue. I reminded him the lease was month to month and hung up. Week 4, other family members started calling. My aunt called first, saying she'd heard what happened and was disappointed in me. When I explained the full situation, she went quiet, then said family makes mistakes and forgives. I told her she was welcome to move in and pay $900 a month if family mattered that much. My uncle tried to play mediator. Maybe I could still help occasionally, drive the kids on weekends. I told him I worked weekends now. He suggested changing my schedule. I asked if he planned to cover my lost wages. That ended the conversation. The real fallout started when my parents realized how much my absence affected them. Jake began missing soccer practices. Without a built-in driver, keeping up with an elite travel schedule wasn't so easy. Eventually, they pulled him from the team and put him in a local league closer to home. He was furious Lily's activities were cut back too. Gymnastics stayed, but dance and art were dropped because they required too much driving. She blamed me, sending passive-aggressive messages about how I'd ruined her future. Errands became their problem again. Mom was back to grocery shopping. Dad handled post-office runs and other tasks. They'd forgotten how much time basic household management actually takes. Around week 6, Mom called crying. They were overwhelmed and exhausted. She asked me to come back, offering reduced rent, $600 a month. I told her I paid $550 now. "But we need you," she said. I replied that they needed an employee and employees leave for better deals. She tried guilt, asking what if something happened to the kids. I told her that was a parent's responsibility, not mine. A couple weeks later, Dad tried one last negotiation. Rent reduced to $500. My own room, only a quarter of the bills. Driving the kids twice a week instead of constantly. It was basically the same cost as now, with more obligations. He admitted they'd made mistakes, about as close to an apology as I'd ever get. I told him I was fine where I was. When he asked if I was really choosing this over family, I said I wasn't paying to be exploited anymore. That ended it. Over the next few months, life stabilized. I worked more hours, got promoted, and went back to online classes, this time studying something I actually wanted. I built savings, bought a better car, and finally had control over my time. A few months later, I ran into Lily at a store with Mom. Lily said she had to quit gymnastics because no one could drive her. I said that was unfortunate and maybe something they should have considered before charging me $900 a month. Mom asked if I was happy after destroying the family. I told her yes. I was sleeping better, less stressed, and financially stable. She called me selfish. I reminded her I paid $900 to share a room while working for free. If that made me selfish, I asked what that made her. She didn't answer. They just grabbed Lily and left. I watched them walk to their car, Mom clearly complaining the whole time while Lily nodded along like she'd been trained. To around month 4, something unexpected came up. Connor's other roommate, Brett, had to move out for work, so we suddenly needed someone to fill his spot. While we were posting ads and meeting people, Jake called me. Not my parents. Jake, Doc, can I move in with you? He asked. He was 16, turning 17 soon and losing his mind. Ever since I left, he'd inherited everything I used to do, driving, errands, constant demands. My parents were already talking about charging him rent when he turned 18, same deal they'd given me. He didn't want to get trapped. I told him he needed to finish high school first and that I couldn't let him move in without our parents' permission. He wasn't happy, but he understood. At least he could see what was coming. 2 weeks later, Dad called, furious. Jake had told them about the conversation. Dad accused me of putting ideas in Jake's head. I told him Jake figured it out on his own after becoming their new unpaid assistant. When I pointed out Jake was now doing all the driving and errands, Dad went quiet. I asked if they planned to charge him rent at 18 too. More silence. Dad threatened to cut me off. I told him there was nothing left to cut. We barely spoke and I supported myself. After that, contact slowed down. Then I got an email from Dad about refinancing their mortgage. They needed my signature because of the old lease. I had someone review the paperwork and found out they'd taken out a second mortgage around the time they started charging me rent. My lease had been used as part of the documentation. When I confronted Dad, he admitted they'd refinanced about $40,000 for home improvements. So they never needed my money. They just wanted extra cash flow. I agreed to sign, but only if I got written confirmation that I had zero financial obligation to the house going forward. Their lawyer confirmed it. I signed. That was the last time I spoke to my dad. 5 months after moving out, life was good. I got promoted again, this time to assistant manager, with a solid raise. I started dating someone from the coffee shop near work and could actually afford real dates. We found a great new roommate, finished my associate degree online, and I got accepted into 2 four-year universities with partial scholarships. For the first time, my life felt like it was actually mine. This was the life I'd been working toward. The one my parents had tried to prevent by keeping me tied down as their personal assistant. And it felt amazing then. Jake turned 17. He called me on his birthday and told me they'd given him a car. It was my old Honda, the one I'd practically destroyed driving everyone around for years. Apparently, they'd fixed it up and handed it down to him. At first, it sounded like good news. Until he explained the catch. They expected him to drive Lily everywhere, run errands, and handle all the responsibilities I used to manage. If he refused, they'd take the car back. Same pattern, different kid. The car wasn't a gift, it was leverage. I told him the truth. He could either play along and be their employee or stand up for himself and deal with the fallout. He said it was easy for me to talk because I'd already escaped. I reminded him he'd have the same choice when he turned 18. He hung up frustrated and I didn't blame him. At least now he could see what was coming. Last month, I got a message from my aunt, the same one who'd lectured me earlier about family loyalty. She apologized. After spending time with my parents, she'd seen how they talked about Jake's responsibilities and finally understood how much they'd used me. She admitted charging a teenager $900 a month while sharing a room wasn't normal. I appreciated the apology even if it came late. I asked if she'd confronted them about Jake. She said she tried, but they shut her down and accused her of interfering. At least she finally saw the truth.